So Bernard Maybeck, so his birthday is today. An architect I didn't know much at all until a few days ago, but I'm happy that I learned a few things. So he was born on February 7th in 1862 and died in 1957, was an American architect in the arts and crafts movement of the early 20th century. He was an instructor at the University of California in Berkeley. And most of his major buildings were in the San Francisco Bay area. Maybeck was born in New York City, the son of a German immigrant, and studied at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris. In France, he moved to Berkeley, California in 1892. He taught engineering, drawing, and architectural design at University of California in Berkeley from 1894 to 1903, and acted as a mentor for a number of important California architects, including Julia Morgan and William Wurster. In 1951, he was awarded the gold medal of the American Institute of Architects. But he's an architect that, for example, Nicolaus Pevsner, he neglected the critics of the modern movement, meaning those who promote modern architecture, neglect those who do not fit the pattern of what is called modern architecture. But he was an interesting man, and with a vision that was able sometimes to unite a sensibility that was belongs to the, so to speak, to the past, and also to bring in innovations. He was also interesting as a character, as a human character, even the way he dressed. I read that he was considered an eccentric. Who knows? Maybe he believed in Swedenborg. I know he worked for a church, a Swedenborgian church. I didn't even know something like this existed. But I read a little bit about Swedenborg, a mystic, Swede. Anyway, here he is, like really a man from a different century, from a different part of the world. You wouldn't say that this is, unless, yes, there are some exotic characters in the United States here and there still, but this is not the typical, I would say, Californian. Anyway, first,
California is known for eccentrics. That's kind of, especially the San Francisco area. So he was in the right place.
He was in the right place at the right time. I don't know about the right time. Anyway, the First Church of Christ Scientist. This is a very fine building. I don't know if I have the best pictures. I did very quickly this presentation, but still we get a feeling about it. It's a building that the hyper-modernist might think is not modern enough, but I think it is convincing. It is interesting, both outside and inside. The richness of the interior, the power of those diagonals that mark the center of the gathering place it's a good building. This is not, I think, an architect to be ignored. And we'll see other buildings like him. He's considered an eclectic and belonging to the arts and crafts movement that was so powerful in Great Britain. But this is a cultured architecture. It's a sensitive architecture. It's also vigorous. I mean, he was trained in France. He studied 5 years in Paris, as opposed to his, protege, Julia Morgan, who studied for 3 years. She was the first woman to be accepted in that famous Beaux-Arts school in Paris. Anyway, I was hoping to be able to also show a little bit of her work. Maybe if I finish quickly. Well, this is just an incipient attempt to signal our awareness about this architect on his birthday. He was very sensitive to the context. He thought that the roads or the built work should not have the upper hand in relationship with nature, in relationship with the landscape, the specificities of a certain place. And in this sense, he was, what today we might call an environmentalist. The modern cynic would consider his work as being too explicitly, too explicitly connected with what is called history, with certain styles, that he's not so-called original enough. But I don't know. I think I'm actually beginning to reconsider my own relationship with history. I always felt an attraction towards a history, but now I'm beginning to flavor, to taste the good aspects of what preceded us, and might not be a good idea to totally abandon. If you are to connect to a certain extent with what preceded us. The Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco was built I will read now. The Palace of Fine Arts in the Marina district in San Francisco is a monumental structure originally constructed for the 1915 Panama Pacific Exposition in order to exhibit works of art. Completely rebuilt from 1964 to 1974, it is one of only a few surviving structures from the exposition. This is the building, and I always knew it, but I didn't know who the architect was. Now I know. So it was rebuilt in 1964 because it was very, very popular, very appreciated by everybody. The most prominent building of the complex, 162 feet high open rotunda, is enclosed by a lagoon on one side and is neighboring a large curved exhibition center on the other side, which is separated from the lagoon by colonnades. As of 2019, the exhibition center was being used as a venue for events such as weddings or trade fairs. It was rebuilt because you'll see also a picture of it falling apart, because initially it was built with perishable materials. Conceived to evoke a decaying ruin of ancient Rome. Interesting idea, to build a new building in order to evoke a decaying ruin. The Palace of Fine Arts became one of San Francisco's most recognizable landmarks. A renovation of the lagoon walkways and a seismic retrofit were completed in early 2009. So that's how the building is now. You'll see more pictures of it. And there are also very interesting sculptures. As you can see, it's huge. There were some incredible assessments coming from important people about this building, and hopefully I have here a quotation about it from Thomas Jefferson. This is the top view. This is the view from the air, and a palace is indeed a palace of the arts. But look how the Palace of the Arts looked like before it was completely demolished and rebuilt. After seeing the Palace of Fine Arts, not Jefferson, but Edison, in 1915, Thomas Edison himself said, the architect of that building is a genius. There is not the equal of it anywhere on earth. The palace was designed in ancient ruin style. I didn't even know there was such a style, ancient ruin style. It has a central rotunda, frontal roofless colonnades, and behind them, the massive structure of the covered art gallery building. The absence of windows in the rotunda and the roofless colonnades highlight the elements of surrounding nature, trees, and water. the unusual allegorical statues of inward-looking women representing introspection. Interesting. Interesting that introspection was valued, because I didn't expect something like this in really in California, or maybe in general in the United States. I thought was more an extroverted country, but you'll see the sculptures.
San Francisco is where the visionaries and the nonconformists and the people with out-of-step ideas tend to end up.
Yes, it's nice to hear this, to learn this. Thank you.
Although now all the Silicon Valley millionaires own all the property, so it's kind of not what it was, but yeah.
Right. Anyway, it's a good building. It's a good building, and it doesn't have that unconvincing, air, if I can call it so, that postmodernists had. This is an architecture that is clearly inspired from the past, but somehow it appears convincing, authentic. Or it is transformed through the imagination of the architect, or he absorbed history, even when, like here, you see the introspection, these ladies in the corners, looking towards the center with their backs towards us. And it's an interesting, both an idea and the fact that this was built like this. And even the idea to flirt, not to flirt, this is not a good word, but to be animated, if you can say so, animated by the ruin, by the thought of ruins, to build ab ovo ruins. They don't quite look like ruins, but the fact that there is no roof, it could puzzle you. I think anyway, I don't know if I'm very inspired now in my comments, but what I see is I think very, very interesting. And it's an architecture that is convincing. It was built 100 years ago. It was rebuilt, but it doesn't look, like stage design or Disney, or no, to me it doesn't. Maybe I'm subjective, but this is what I feel. I think there is a level of authenticity here somehow. And I think it derives this sense of authenticity from the authenticity of the man. I think, and probably there are texts about this building, doing justice to it more than I can now. Anyway, so this is Bernard Maybach. You'll see a few other things by him. Discovering this architect made me think that it might be possible, actually, even from the position apparently of an insufficient originality that eclecticism might evoke, it would still be possible to create, I think, significantly. Anyway, I'll think more about this. I was a little bit adventurous in my statement, the last statement, but I like his work. I like the moderns, but here I see a richness which is not to be ignored, I think. And the fact that so many people love this building, and it's one of the important structures of San Francisco, it shouldn't diminish its value as a work of architecture that is liked by the general public, but I'm sure also the so-called educated architect likes it too. After all, what is to be disliked here? It's a monument, but it's dedicated to art, and its scale, as you can see, is impressive. But I don't think it's arrogant. So, to put it simply, I like it. Anyway, I'm rushing a little bit because now this is a building, also a very interesting building by this curious architect, if I am to use this word curious. He had many influences, from ancient Rome, Greece, from the Gothic times, the Middle Ages. But he also transformed. This building is not a pastiche; it's a creation. Man, look at the interior. It's God. It's a very interesting space, a very interesting room, large room. Um, so I think he was an architect with a lot of to use the middle name of the first name of Mr. Brown yesterday, of capabilities. Look at this. It's the Hearst Hall, University of California and Berkeley, but I think initially was a villa and then it was purchased by the University of California. I'm not very sure, but I think it's a very interesting building, and it deserves more attention and more study. Even from this side, it's a bulky building. It's a big building. It's machinery, an architectonic machinery of a certain complexity. Interesting work.
The arch reminds me of a Gothic cathedral, but on either side of it, it looks like certain temples in Japan or China, almost. Not quite, but close.
Yes, indeed.
So there's kind of a sense of.
I wonder if you cannot do architecture, valuable architecture, inspiring yourself from history. I don't know. I was always against this, but he seems to to have, as I said, a certain level of authenticity that cannot doesn't allow me to consider his work a pastiche. A Bauk house, he built many houses. I just collected a few images for this presentation now because it is his birthday. It's very interesting, actually. I mean, he's not, outrageously, he's not ostentatious in his inventions. But on the other hand, he's not just bowing his head towards the past. So I don't know. I think if a building shows the character of its creator, I would say that he was not, he might have had eccentricities, but I don't think he was an arrogant man. You can tell from this building, there is, not everything is unbelievable. I mean, the skill is here, but sometimes, I don't know, his parapet is maybe a little bit shy or predictable. There is a level of predictability here that maybe it could have been avoided. But then above, I don't know. I think it's a good house, and it's built with honesty, and also it has a variety of. I mean, it has movement. So in this, you might say it has a level of modernity. I think he was a good architect. This is a piece of furniture by him. You see the influence, from history. It's certainly. I mean, you cannot compare it with, let's say, but it is arts and crafts. So even this house, this house, it has its asymmetry. It has this entrance, which is kind of conveniently, unoriginal. But then he takes liberties when you don't expect it. What's behind it is symmetrical, but here is an obvious asymmetry. And so he's able to negotiate between the static aspects of what history gives him and then a certain amount of irreverence or innovation that he allows himself to have. even here, you can see maybe some influences from the East, from the Orient. It's interesting. I shouldn't talk too much about him because I don't really know him so well. I just discovered him, but I'm glad I discovered him, and I think is architect we shouldn't ignore. Now, it is even now a showroom for cars. And I think even initially it's a good building, although it is so, I wouldn't say it's pretentious. I mean, yes, it has these columns, it has these decorations here, and when you think that there are actually cars inside, but I think the modern, openly modern structures that are showrooms for cars are less graceful than this one. This one, maybe, I don't know very well how to interpret it. You wouldn't expect to be a showroom for cars. And now it has a name for the British cars or something.
Well, Jaguars are very expensive luxury cars, so it has high-end cars in it.
Right, of course, it has to. It has to. I mean, such a building deserves such cars, and vice versa. Anyway, this is a book published about him pursuing beauty, the architecture of Bernard Maybeck. And this is an interesting building. It had logs on its facade, but it was demolished. It was part of that Panama International Exhibition, and it was built as a temporary Panama Pacific Fair building constructed in 1915 for the concatenated order of who? I don't know what this is, a sort of goofy fraternal order for the lumber industry. Here is what the membership of the order looked like. Here they are. This is funny, but the building was very, very interesting. Too bad. I think I have another picture or two, but it doesn't exist any longer. Anyway, these men really took themselves seriously, as it can be seen. It amazes me, this meeting between commercial concerns and a certain kind of mystification, if not mysticism itself. This is the building, very interesting and mysterious and exotic. They had money, obviously. You see, with logs, with trunks of trees in lieu of columns. I mean, too bad they cut down trees for this, but in 1915 they didn't care so much about, unfortunately. Now here, I planned, but because I'm in a hurry now and I asked for forgiveness, I plan to show, I didn't know anything about this Katy Perry. She's a singer in the United States who wants now to buy a medieval style, so to speak, convent that he built. This is the singer. I even plan to listen to one of his songs, but as I said, unfortunately, I have to leave soon. Anyway, because I like somehow to attempt to unite so-called low culture with high culture, so I do not become, Susan Sontag used to be known for this as well, although she was, I think, very, very, representing very more actually high culture than low culture. Anyway, this is the convent that Maybach built, and this lady wants to purchase, and she has the money, like 14 millions, and she wants to buy it from some nuns. This was bought initially by a religious order. Anyway, he built a lot of things, and you see one of the nuns, she seems to be happy. I mean, I would be happy in such an interior as well. I mean, I love the Gothic, so even this is recent Gothic, so to speak. It's not unpleasant to live here, far from it. Anyway, and this is the singer. Anyway, architect Bernard Maybeck built the estate in 1927 for this person who founded a radio station in Los Angeles. The house was then sold in the 50s to Catholic philanthropists, and here are the names. In 1972, Holtzman and her fellow sisters pooled their money to purchase the property. The nuns lived in this estate until 2011, when the archdiocese forced their relocation. Anyway, you know, the destiny of the tumultuousness behind the real estate desires and manipulations and so on. This is the whole thing that Maybach built. And with a proud singer in the lower corner.
No nun, that's for sure.
Pardon?
She's not a nun, that's for sure.
Well, who knows? I mean, I think
not at that time, anyway.
She doesn't look like a nun at all, but I understood she has engraved on it. She has a tattoo somewhere on her body with Jesus or something. Her parents were apparently very religious, and anyway. You know, most of these singers has, I mean, many of them, even Lady Gaga has some videos where she's impersonating a nun and so on. It's, I don't know, it's guilt, or I don't know. There are all kinds of complex psychologies at work. British Motor Car Distributors, that's the building that you saw for the expensive cars. Now, the Town and Gown Club was designed in 1899 by Bernard Maybeck. Another good building, really, with sloping roof. But it has bigger. It is not, well, maybe not so much in this picture, but here, yes. I wonder what Frank Lloyd Wright would have thought of him. He probably would have hated it. Sanger House in Berkeley. This also has interesting things, and the tectonics are convincing. The interior also is very well built. And, I mean, he was German, so you know, rigorous.
Yeah.
Pardon?
The interiors are all great. I keep imagining living in some of these things. Yeah. Even from the back, the building has some movement. I think this is the last picture. And since I am, it's already, I can quickly, very quickly, because I should have left, but and I ask for forgiveness again, but very quickly I will mention a little bit about Julia Morgan, who was his protege, and her birthday was in January, and she died on February 2nd. So let's bow our heads for her, because she was the first woman architect, the first woman who entered L'École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and the first woman architect who obtained her license in California. And so, you know, she was a special architect. So let's very quickly, because otherwise I would feel guilty. So she was the protege, the pupil of the architect I just showed. So she was an American architect and engineer. She designed more than 700 buildings in California during a long and prolific career. She's best known for her work on Hearst Castle in San Simeon, California. Here she is in Paris as a student, probably a very serious person who studied first engineering and then architecture. Here she is with her client, Mr. Hearst, an incredible
publisher of newspapers and magazines. He was immensely rich and immensely powerful, and she was his architect. Anyway, and Citizen Kane by Orson Welles is the American Academy of Film considers it the best film, American film ever, depicts the life of this gentleman. But you'll see now the castle that she built for him. Here is the architect, Julia Morgan. Morgan was the first woman to be admitted to the architecture program at l'École Nationale Supérieure des Beaux-Arts in Paris, and the first woman architect licensed in California. She designed many edifices for institutions serving women and girls, including a number of YWCAs and buildings for Mills College. In many of her structures, Morgan pioneered the aesthetic use of reinforced concrete, a material that proved to have superior seismic performance in 1906 and 1989 earthquakes. She embraced the arts and crafts movement and used various producers of California pottery to adorn her buildings. She sought to reconcile classical and craftsman, scholarship and innovation, formalism and whimsy. And she was very fond of Maybach. She appreciated his work and his teaching. So she was the first, I read this. No, she received the AIA gold medal posthumously in 2014, the first woman to get this prize. Some drawings by her, pencil drawings, they don't seem to be outrageously innovative, but in her built work, you'll see that she was capable of even resolving structural matters very, very well. I love this drawing. This drawing is both sensitive and rigorous, and it has nerve. Very nice drawing. So now today we have a lot of female students in architecture, but at that time this was not the case at all. And so we have to acknowledge what is to be acknowledged. She took a heroic position in the field of architecture. The hidden engineer, the designs of Julia Morgan, an exhibition, a book. The Hearst Castle, this was a building that I'm reading now is a National Historic Landmark and California Historical Landmark, conceived by William Randolph Hearst, the publishing tycoon, and his architect, Julia Morgan. It was built between 1919 and 1947, so almost 30 years, known formally as La Cuesta Encantada, the Enchanted Hill, and often referred to simply as San Simeon. Hearst called his castle the Ranch. This was the man, a very ambitious man. Here is Citizen Kane, depicting in the film his biography, and I don't know, you don't see very well here. Sorry, it's on the coast, at the Pacific Ocean. This is the castle. It looks like a church, but you'll see pictures with it. It is a lot of, an opulent ambiance. With a lot of, obviously this man had no limits in his desire and his ability to put a lot of money into it. He loved, there are, somebody said, bankers always talk about art and artists always talk about money, because, when you have the money, you miss the culture. And when you have the culture, usually you miss the money. So, but he collected unbelievably. Most surely Citizen Kane made a clear reference to this man, and you'll see some of the riches in this castle. Yes, it's an eclectic architecture. Yes, there is opulence. There are all kinds of styles and historical references. You should see his office, his library. It's unbelievable. Just the top of one of these towers, and this, God, look here, it's a pool within, Islamic art, and not just It's also European art here combined. And my God, my God. He was a collector, and Julia Morgan was serving his collecting interests very loyally, I would say. And it's an extravagant place. This is his study rooms, his office. His, can you believe it? Here is another picture. It's, even a king would feel inadequate in such a space or small. Anyway, this is a building that she built, a tower, El Campanil, that didn't fall at all. In fact, it wasn't affected at all by the earthquake in 1906. And that's when her credentials rose dramatically, because she proved herself as a very skillful engineer and architect. She worked with reinforced concrete at a time when it was not so common. So a courageous lady, and totally dedicated to architecture. In fact, her commentators do not know anything about her so-called private life. It was as if she didn't have a private life. There was nothing to gossip about. She was just dedicated to architecture. Bravo to her. Now this is an YMCA building in Oakland. Also, I would say, even by today's standards, is a building. I mean, look at this, and look at the roofing, and very luminous. It's a good building. Even if you don't like historicism, it's a good building. The Berkeley Women's City Club, here again, and when she received the golden medal by AIA, she had supporters. Even Frank Gehry supported her. He commented that she used her structure in her buildings is unusual. Maybe not so much here, but we'll see some examples. He was supported by Frank Gehry, by Michael Graves, and someone else whose name now I do not recall. But I was surprised a little that Frank Gehry supported him, not so supported her, sustained her, fought for her cause, because she was the first woman to receive the prestigious golden medal offered by AIA, and posthumously. Anyway, now look at those cars. Indeed, it was a long time ago. And the interior, what can we say? It's comfortably. Anyway, this is an interesting building, especially the interior. The conference room is very, very nice. At first, I thought it was some kind. I didn't know it was a conference center. Look at this, and look at the structure. It seems to be logical and rigorous and rational. But it also has a little bit of a so-called Gothic feeling. And here as well, very interesting structure. Maybe this is the structure that Frank Gehry admired. I don't know, but it's certainly less crazed than his architecture. It's rational, but also has a certain lyricism, almost, a sensitivity that is not so common. I like this room, this big space. And I think I'm approaching, really, it's a sketch of a presentation. But since I talked about Bernard Maybach, I thought of saying a few things about Julia Morgan as well. Both interesting architects. Thank you very much. And really, please forgive me, I do have to go.
You gave us 15 extra minutes. Thank you.